My name is Nathaniel Mather. I grew up in Los Angeles, California. From the age six on, I started playing the drums. My childhood dream was to be a professional musician. For the next 15 odd years, that's what I did. So when I was about 16, I started working professionally and doing studio work and working with other bands in Los Angeles. And then around when I was age 26, I guess that's 10 years, I had a lifestyle change, and the music business back then in the late 60s and early 70s was sort of wild and crazy, and I unfortunately partaked in most of that, and it got me to a point in my life where I didn't really like myself. I didn't like the choices I was making, and I decided that for me to be healthy, I needed to get out of the business. So I did. And it was also an interesting time for me because I was creative inside. I never painted. I didn't paint previous to that. I didn't draw, but I really had a need to express individually my creativity. And being a drummer, it's really fun to be a part of a group, but I wasn't writing music, so the creativity was really limited. So I thought, this would be great. I'm going to start painting, and it's just solely my expression. It's just solely, what's going on in me. I don't have to rely on the people around me to create this art. And that was really exciting to do. I put together a portfolio to go to California Institute of the Arts in probably about a 2.5 week span. I didn't even know what to put in the portfolio because I didn't even know what a portfolio was. So I just did a bunch of drawings and paintings and sent along, and surprisingly they took me into the school. So that's how I started. And then it developed from there, and I still play music, I still play drums, but it's not professionally at all anymore.
What was your first medium?
The first medium was watercolor, and it was bordering realistic. So it was, I would take sort of a realistic view of it with animals and birds and stuff, but put them into somewhat surreal or, animated surrounding. But I was really interested in more color. Paul Klee was one of my inspirations, and so I got a little bit more and more into the design of it and not quite as worried about representing and having it look like a real bird, and that sort of was freeing. And then I went into an abstract mode, and I was working in steel, and was also at that time really influenced by Richard Diebenkorn. So it was that flavor, that was going on for me. And then I don't know how to transition to that, but I got married and decided that painting full time wasn't really going to be enough income for me, for my family, future family. So I got into the golf business, which is wild. And I wasn't a golfer at the time, but I decided that would be sort of fun. And as I learned how to play golf, I love playing golf. So, and also in that process, you asked about, how the spiritual component of my work. I also became a Christian at that time in my life, around about 27. And there was a real disconnect for me on how to express what was inside, and then the expectations that I had at that time of what God wanted me to paint. And I was unfortunately thinking that I needed to sort of mute what was going on. So if there's anything sort of darker or, anger or hurt or frustration showing with my work, it scared me. And I thought my work sort of needed to look a little bit more pretty and more, joyful. But that wasn't where I was in my life. So it wasn't real me. So I quit painting. I quit painting for about 5 years when I went into the golf business and I was wrestling with, why would God give me a talent and a desire to paint, but ask me to restrict what I'm painting? And he wasn't, but this was my interpretation of it at that time. So through that process and through just being in a relationship with him, I learned that, that was a fuzzy thinking on my part, because if he gives me the talent and the desire to do it, he's also given me the freedom to do it and express who I am. And there was no condemnation, there was no expectations on his part of what's going to come out. And so that really freed me up, and at that point I started painting again, and then I've been painting ever since.
Let's talk about the style of your painting. It's naive art. It almost shows like your inner innocent side.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. When I first got into the golf business, I was hired by a management company that ran golf clubs, and I took a assessment on my personality, and it came back. They said I was too naive to be in the business. They hired me anyway, but they said I was too naive. So I think part of it is my personality, but it's also I struggle with that as well, because at some point in my career as an artist, I thought that it was I thought it would be a lot more important if I painted things that had a little bit more angst in them. You know, all the painters that I really enjoyed, they had some really hard things to grapple with when you looked at their paintings. They weren't always pretty paintings, and they weren't always, you know, joyful paintings. But I thought that was, you know, that was the mark of really a true artist. And it's been a long journey to realize that that's just not who I am inside. That's not where I've become. And so stylistically, I mean, what I get in my artwork, when the responses I get is, oh, that's really pretty. That makes me really happy. You know, this is really joyful. And that used to sort of bother me because I thought it was a little shallow. But the more I get into it, the more I hear those responses and then talk a little bit farther with the people that are saying that, it's more about hope, I think. It's more about seeing something that gives them joy, and it's pretty and it's happy, but it's giving them something even more, I think, internal that they're looking for and they're needing. And that's really exciting to me. I do a lot of work with children's hospitals here in the United States, and I'll get contacted by a family that's their daughter or son has been in the hospital for quite a while, and they'll just relay on how important my artwork was to them in the process of being able to, you know, go through that trauma. And I thought, well, that's about as good as it gets for me for art. I mean, if that's what God is using my art for, I don't know what could be better than that, to give somebody hope, to give somebody a peace, and to give somebody some just a reprieve from all the, you know, the hard things that we go through in life. So I've decided that it's not really important for me to be a famous artist, but it's important for me to be true to my personality and true to that calling for me, and not try to force something different. And I started getting into the multimedia with paper and, you know, different things on the artwork. I spent a little bit of time doing some illustrations, and I really was drawn to the mixture of type and paper and design. And so that's what sort of transitioned then into the acrylic mixed media that I've been doing for about 10 years now.
Your artwork, some of it looks layered.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think that is my process. So I will do maybe a sketch or maybe some sort of really rough draft of what I want to paint. But a lot of times it is just, I'll identify what I'm going through. I'll identify maybe something I'm struggling with in my life, or something I'm, you know, excited about in my life. And that sort of, I hate to say feeling, but that where I am in all that will drive what I paint. So I'll just sit down and just start layering. Like you said, I'll sit down and I'll start with the textures, and then I'll start with maybe, you know, oh, I think I want to put that in. And then it just builds. And every time I put one thing in the painting, it reflects and sort of moves to the next. So I'll start with one vision of what I think I'm going to go and finish with, and it comes out as completely different. And that's the fun of it. And that relates to me sort of in my life, because my life is layered like that. You know, it starts and nothing is finished, nothing is, you know, perfected, but I will, you know, start with where I am, and then learn and grow and layer on top of that, which, you know, leads to a much better and healthy lifestyle, much better healthy future for me, and obviously a much better understanding of my relationship with God, and why that's so important to me, and what that looks like beyond painting, what that looks like in the rest of my life.
You are inserting found object letters. Yep.
Yeah. So, well, you know, I went through a whole series of paintings where I asked everybody, not everybody, but the majority of the people in my world, the people I've come across, to give me things that were important to them. And it was either, what's in your pocket right now? What do you have in your pocket that's important to you? And I would collect all those things and ask them why, what is that? Some guy gave me a guitar pick and he said, well, this is what I do. This is what I love. So I was really intrigued by what I could put into the paintings that other people could relate to, or other experiences of people besides me that could bring into the painting. But I also liked it because it just gave it a sort of a historical flavor, especially with the letters and type. And just besides the texture of it as well, just being able to, have those layers develop, and you can see, see through it, and see through it, and see through it, which is, isn't that what we all do with our life? Just like that. I hope we do.
You told me that you often designate quotes from the Bible to your art.
Yeah. At one period of my time, that would be on the painting. I would have a Bible verse on the painting. And I've sort of gone away from that. If we're talking about a painting and someone's interested in what my process was and what I was thinking, I'll let them know where I was with my relationship with God at that time. But I'm a little bit more thinking now that, at some point I thought it was important for me to change the world and have everybody know God loves them, and that's still important to me, but my art was going to be that vehicle. And I still think it is, but I've learned that relationships and commitment to relationships and love is what people are going to see about me and ultimately see about God. So I like putting little things in because it gives some people, maybe a little hint of where I'm going, but I also like to have it just a little vague enough that they can ask me questions. So it's not quite as, when you put a Bible verse in, you made a statement, and it's a pretty bold statement, and it reflect the way people look at it, and sometimes it can turn them off. Sometimes, it can cause some emotions in them that I think ultimately in their life they should be dealing with, but I don't know if it's my ultimate what I want to do with my painting. I think my painting now is just a reflection of what God has done for me in my life over the last 30 years. So, and that's what I think comes through. I think when people say, oh, that makes me happy, I think they're seeing my happiness and my growth and my change and my just the beauty of what God has done in my life is now showing up in my work because it's in me. So I don't see the need to force it as much as I did before, if that makes sense.
A lot of blues, a lot of shades of blue.
Yeah, I go through different phases. And I don't know, well, blue's my favorite color, so we'll just start there. But it just, I'm not sure. When I get to a painting, I'll just look. Like I said, I'll start with some first color. It's never blues, not using my first color. And then as I put the colors down and how they play against each other, that sort of, take the direction where I go. And part of that is, I went through a whole period of more neutral colors and just highlighting with some bright colors. And that's just experimental. Sometimes I like the paintings behind me are the two new paintings I did this week, and they weren't even close to what I started out in the color palette. They weren't even close. It's funny because I wanted to do something really base and neutral and dramatic, and all of a sudden I've got all this color in it. I'm like, I just can't get away from color. I can't get away from blue, obviously, since it's there.
The palette in your landscape art is different than the palette in your abstract art.
Yeah. Well, part of that is market driven. I have a gallery that just works with all my abstract, and they do like a muted palette for their clientele. Part of that is just trying for me to figure out my, how I work, but also figure out what's going to fit into their gallery and what's going to be, something that they might be able to promote.
I was wondering, where are you right now?
Well, again, it's almost like a diary for me. I don't write a diary. I do journal sometimes, but that's what the paintings are on a weekly basis. So there's a painting I'm just working on right now, and there's a fellow that I've been friends with for 40 years. There's some medical issues that he's going through, and it's pretty serious. And for me, I emotionally connecting, and I'm doing a painting that reminds me of him and our relationship, and it's how it's been built. So the things that I remember about him, the things I think about him, the things I love about him will show up in that painting. So that's what it is a lot too. Or if I'm struggling like, okay, how come God healed this person in my life and he didn't heal somebody else in my life? What does that mean? What does that reflect on God's character? I don't understand that, how that can happen. Then my painting will reflect that, and I'll sort of look at the tension between that, and it'll show up. It'll show up, and like I said, I don't plan it. I don't pick, all the different items and put it in to make it be that way, but that's what will come out. So it's more intuitive. And it's always when I'm done and I look at the picture and I back up, I go, oh, okay, I get it now. I can see all those things that I was, feeling inside and dealing with, the questions or the joys that I was dealing with, and it just comes out. And I do a lot better when I don't try to, limit that, or I don't try to analyze that too much as I'm going, because I just feel like let's just go, let it out, and we'll see what's going on.
The emotional feelings, are they connected in any way with your past?
Well, yeah, they have to be, because my past comes with me. I don't know really. I do know in terms of in my art career and my art life, my early 2 or 3 years of my art was really dark and actually sort of scary. And I was going through a really, really emotionally difficult time and searching. And I know, like I said, I became a believer, and it was a slow transition. It wasn't an immediate, oh, now I'm going to be painting this. But I can see just how, like I said, my relationship with God drives all of that for me. So the more I learned about how much he loved me, how much he accepted me, and how much he gave for me, my work evolved into that. And I started thinking about work that's restorative, and work that's beautiful, and work that shows what he is showing me and what he's given me. So I don't feel so, and I'm not worried about whether work comes out, a little dark, but it doesn't as much anymore. And I guess that's important to know for me, that it's just a reflection of that 30-year journey of learning about him and living with him and changing who I was and changing the habits I didn't like. It just shows up, and maybe it shows up in blue. I don't know.
How did your marriage influence your art?
Well, yeah, every stage of a relationship is going to have its ups and downs, and its positives and negatives. And I can see, if I look back in my art, in the process of that marriage, that I think, number one, that there's a pressure now that it's, I want to make a living at this and I want to support my family. There's a pressure to paint what's going to sell. There's a pressure to paint what you just painted that just sold. And for me, it was a struggle to figure out, okay, I'm going to just need to paint what's inside me. And if it sells, great. If it doesn't, I could live with that. And that was hard to do with the family. I've got 3 daughters as well. So I always felt the pressure that I really better make something good that's marketable. And that sort of is a sure way to derail any kind of creative spark that I have, because then now I'm just thinking about the end product and not enjoying the process. So, it's just like it's just like my daughters, as they grew and I saw them, they were very impactful on what I was showing up and putting in my art as well. As I learned to be a parent, and I learned how to love as a father. It was just all connected.
What would you say was the most decisive moment for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it just ties into what happened to me. There was a moment in my life, I had gone through, I'd done probably way too much of any kind of self-medication that you could early in my life to ease my anxiety and to ease my hurts. And when I hit mid-20s, I didn't want to live that lifestyle, but I couldn't get out of it. It was a really tough a tough weight to leave. And I finally got to the point of sobriety and healing when I realized, and it's going to just, again, takes it back to God, but when I realized that he loved me unconditionally. And that was the moment in my life where I said, okay, he's built me, he's made me, he knows who I am, he knows what I'm going to do. I'm not going to surprise him with anything, and he loves me anyway. And he died for me anyway. That just released everything. And my painting all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but it became sort of a lifeblood to me. It wasn't a burden. I didn't feel like I was painting to make money. I just felt this is a gift and I'm going to enjoy it because he gave it to me. And he rejoices when he sees me use my gift. So that was a huge turning point for me in painting, because it also helped me keep going through the process of painting. Because you can get so discouraged and you can get so, introverted on what's going on that you get locked and you can't paint. But so that's probably the biggest, aha moment, in my painting career, but it also came along with the biggest aha moment in my life.
How do you market yourself?
Yeah, I'm relatively good and relatively poor at that. So for a large span of my painting career, I was working full time. So I was working 40 to 60 hours a week. So it was just enough for me to get the paintings out. My first goal was to find galleries that would market for me. So, which I've done, and I've got multiple galleries through the world that sell my work. And now that I'm painting full time, I have more time to. I'll do outdoor festivals, and I'll do all different sorts of places to get my work. I'm not. I probably could use somebody that's gifted in that, because I've never really felt comfortable in selling myself, and I have to separate that from selling my art, because a lot of times it's difficult to go out and try to tell somebody, this is really great stuff, and I did it, and why, and try to convince them and try to show them why they need to be putting this in their world, or why they could be putting it in there. But I also am really, having worked in a corporate world, for years, which, was a great background. So I do have some. So I'll identify galleries that have artists that are like mine, but not like mine, and I'll reach out to them. I develop a mailing list and, continue to let people know. I remember I had an illustration rep who said, people love your work, but they are going to be more interested in you as a person and why you do that. And he said, just spend time on the social media talking about your process and talking about what you're doing and showing, just a little glimpse into your life. And I thought, that is really great. I'm really bad at it. So that would probably be some area I could improve, because I do think there's some benefit to that, because they love the work, they love the art, but they also want to know all about you. They also want to be part of you. And that's a hard thing to do, especially, one-on-one as we're talking, it's great, but, just to blanket it out there, it's a little bit more difficult for me.
Is there an artist or a school of art that you admire?
Well, yeah, there are schools, but it's mostly individual artists. So, like I said, Paul Klee was huge for me when I first started out. Motherwell, I just love the way he puts his designs together. David Hockney, I mean, come on, his landscapes are just breathtaking to me, and just the colors and how he does that. And it's interesting. Each year there'll be somebody new that I, might be a new artist that comes out that I'll just go, oh my goodness, that is just beautiful. So yeah, there's probably a list of 100 there that I think that would motivate me when I see it. But those are ones that come off the top of my head.
How does summer look for you?
Well, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and it'll be 95 today. It's been in the 90s for the last 3 weeks, and I don't like it. It's too hot. I grew up on the beach, and so 75 is perfect for me. I've got some friends that have come out from England who are here, and they love it because they said it never gets hot in England. And this one guy's got some arthritis, and he says he's never felt better because it's so warm. But it sort of drains me. The summer drains me, and I love the light. I love the storms that come in and the clouds, and that part of it, but I could go for a little break. So, 75, 70, 68 with little clouds, that's perfect weather for me. That really energizes me. And even, stormy days and cold wind, that's also really energizing. The hotter it gets, the more it sort of burns me out. So I sort of just try to grit through summer out here. Maybe the blue, and where I am right now is just that the skies are always blue out here, which is great. Although I'd love some clouds to soften it up. I've got to do some yard work when we leave here today and mow the lawn, and it's, like I said, it's 95, and that's just, I'd rather it not be that. But
How can we find Nashville in your art?
well, that's a good question. I don't know if Nashville, I have lived in so many different states and cities when I was in the golf business. I've got a bit of maybe 10 different cities. I think there's a connection, obviously with my music background, and I'm connected here in the music industry. I've done multiple illustrations and artwork for musicians and record labels here. But I do think, being a drummer, there is a flow and sort of a rhythm to my paintings as well. And I think that, that shows up, and that's just Nashville to me. It's, the music here is unbelievable, and the talent here is unbelievable. But in terms of what you might visually see that represents Nashville, I don't think, you'll see it. I think we were talking before about my recent landscapes, and they look like they're from Italy. That's not at all what Nashville looks like. I think that's where I wish I was right now in the summer, over there. Yeah, so I just say more, it's more what Nashville, it's an exciting city. It's really vibrant in the music business, and like I said, I'm involved in that, so I get to hear great music. There's a band that came out, they're actually studio musicians that have put 2 albums out the last 20 years. And the last one, I think 3 years ago, and they're called Dogs of Peace. And they asked me to do their cover artwork. And then I luckily got to go and see them build, their 12 songs. Every time they did a new song, they would bring me to the studio and I could hear it. And I got so energized and so moved by what they were doing. Their art was just amazing. So I'd go home and I'd paint a picture about that song. And when the album was done, I said, "Hey guys, I've got 12 images, and it's, I'd love to have you see them." So we had a party, end of the mixing party when they were, mixed the album, and I took all the paintings and I just flipped. They just loved them. So they actually ended up putting all those paintings in the liner notes next to each song, so an illustration of that song. So in that sense, you'll see Nashville, at its best, because I'm creating while they're creating. It was sort of fun, a collaborative effort there.
Let's talk about your illustrations. You collaborate with several magazines.
There's a point in my life where I had an illustration rep out of New York that represented me. And again, I was working full time, and I wanted to transition to paint and to do illustrations. So that was the goal. I enjoy working on other people's ideas, but it's also restrictive in a sense, because you'll get an art director that says, "Hey, this is the vision this is what the article is, and here's some highlights. Go ahead and give me what you got." And then you have an art director that will give me almost the final drawing and say, "Make it look like this." And that wasn't as fun for me. And then I'm old school. It's all hands now. I can use the computerize it, but I don't. And unfortunately, the business has gone, so far ahead. And I think, it's pretty easy for anybody to illustrate anything now online. So not as much demand for my work. And I got to the point where my paintings were, my career was going really well with my paintings. I thought, well, I'm just going to spend the majority of my time doing that, because there is a outlet for that, and there are places for me to work in that. I still look to do illustrations, but I'm not at all. I don't have a rep. I don't, I'm not promoting that. If somebody sees my work and asks me to do something, I'd absolutely do it. But I miss it. It's fun to do a project. They have the timeline. When I do the paintings for the hospitals, it's similar to that, because I'll have to do roughs on all the paintings. And I did a complete series for University of Yale University Children's Hospitals. And I remember I was working with a committee that was looking at the work, and I think I went through 21 different drawings, pre-drawings of the same image before we got the final, to go ahead. So that's not as fun when you have that kind of input, but it's still, and the good thing about it is it stretches me. They'll ask me to do images, or they'll ask me to use things that I might not pick on my own. So it's a good way to keep me fresh. So,
you work with hospitals from all over North America.
Yeah. So it originally started as a gallery in Boston that carries my work, and a designer that was working with Yale University saw it and she loved it. And I've done, I think, four major projects for them in the last 5 years. And then once that started, other hospitals started seeing it and they would contact me. So University of Iowa, which is one of my favorite, have just a great art program, and they have a ton of my work. But now it's pretty much they'll contact me because they see it, from their peers, or that kind of thing. So, but right now, that is, I think, one of the most enjoyable parts of being an artist is to give that gift. I mean, it's amazing. Like I think I said before, the emotion that they feel and the relief they feel, or at least told me that a painting can give somebody, and you don't hear that a lot, in your regular work. If you have a show and somebody buys it, they love it, and then you never really hear from them again, how it's impacting their life in their home. But this is a way to get some feedback that you wouldn't get before, and it's just, it's really, really cool.
How can people find you?
Well, they can come on out to Nashville. They're welcome to stay with me. We can go to some music venues. So I got my website, nathanielmather.com. All my contact information is there. I also have an Etsy store that I sell originals, but I mostly are prints and affordable work. And then I also have 2 publishers, one here in California. It's California, and one in Toronto. And I don't keep track, but I do have a lot of my images in publication. So if you go and just type me in, there's tons of publishers and outlets that carry my work. And they can call me and say hi. My email is on my website. So yeah, how else could I find them? I don't know. How else, I don't. If there's any more suggestions, let me know. The people that are going to be listening to this, I would like to, and everybody says it all the time, but just stay focused on what your gift is and enjoying your gift. And I know we're responsible for the stuff that happens after that in marketing and, being professional, but don't get discouraged. Or if you do get discouraged, hang in there, because what's important is what you're producing, the gift that you have, and that relationship is where it all happens. And I know there's been so many times in my career that I've been really disappointed and felt, well, I don't know, this is too much. But it's just hang in there, I think. And the other thing would be get people around you that you trust and that you can share these things with, and that can love you back and support you in that. Because I think that's really, really healthy. That'll keep you going and keep you on the right track wherever, whatever you see your future is.